festival, this event, very, very formally.
So, hello and welcome to At the Fringe Stay at Home Edition 2020. This is the first live event with an actual audience, and it's the biggest audience we've had since we've been running audiences at Poems and Pints and Pilsner Poetry. And it's really cool to be actually doing this internationally and digitally, and it's very bloody stressful as well. And now I would like to hand you over to Dominic Williams, our MC for the night.
Okay, good evening, everyone. You've probably heard enough from me already, but nos dda pawb. I'm missing Wales. I've been away for quite a while now, several days. So I'm going to go north, first of all, and ask Sean if he'd like to open the readings from the Welsh channel.
Okay, right. Everybody hearing me, I hope. And I'm going to go actually outside of Wales for what I'm going to read, which is a poem about map, a tube, the tube map. And we're all familiar with that to get around London. And this was written at the time we had all the tumult about Brexit, and where there was a mixture of despair and hope almost every other day about what would happen. And I'll read in Welsh and then my English version. Map y tiwb. Betawn ni dipyn bach mwy Prydeinllyd. Gallwn dy ddewis yn eicon ynys y cedyrn, yn gwneud y cam yn union, yn cuddio'r crudiadau, a chylchu pob cyswllt yn dwt. Deallais di'n blentyn, a gwneud fy rhieni'n falch o ddehonglid y ddirgelion I fericianwyr ffwndrys. Ac eto, ti yw'n hanllaw heddiw, a blynyddoedd heb heneiddio dy steil ddiflino. Finnau bellach sy'n colli fy ffordd, ath Brydain dithau hefyd, rhywle rhwng y llinellau. Tube map. If I were a tiny bit more British, I could choose you as an icon of this sceptred isle, making the crooked straits, hiding the meanderings, and circling each connection. Tidy. I cracked you as a child, and made my parents proud as I divined your secrets for bewildered Americans. And you remain my guide, your stylized cartography mellowed with age. But today, I'm the one who's lost, and you're Britain too, somewhere between the lines.
Diolch yn fawr iawn I ti, Sean. It was great to hear you. I love the way that tidy was just left there in the middle of that poem, quite ambiguous and leading us to different ideas of what that might mean in terms of the nation, in terms of the map. And of course, it's wonderful to start an event with the Welsh language. It reminds me of Ivor's poem. Ivor has a poem about the underground that you probably know. But of course, he is London Welsh, so a very, very different perspective on that map. Okay, I'm going to bring us back into the room now at the festival and ask Colm to come and read something for us, please.
Vroll. But if you're going for a walk, why do it alone? Why not share it with a cow? If you do it right, you might get a friendly face licking. What more could you want? Go up to a cow, grab her by her ears, and let rip into her face with the most bitching banshee guttural roll your bloodying lungs can push through your strained throat, with eyes popping to tears, to tippy toes as your muscles tense up and hair falls across your face. Release. Cow screaming can relieve stress, add excitement to a boring country walk, bring relief to muscular tensions, stimulate blood circulation, cure loneliness and athlete's foot, gallstones, obnoxious tensions, baldness, menstrual bleedings, and tensions. Training before cow screaming can help to avoid unexpected stampeding, cow kicking and head butting, heart attacks, blood clots, or strokes. Talk to your doctor first. Note, there is research suggesting evidence that the recipient might not appreciate cow screaming as much as you, but this has not been confirmed.
Holistic medicine of the finest kind. Those of you who've been following the festival during the day so far may recall a wonderful poem from, or a wonderful song actually, from George when he was serenading as the moon a herd of dancing cows, and I'm just wondering whether they started dancing because they were fed up of humans screaming in their faces all the time. Okay, I'm going to stay in Sweden, though I'm going to move out of this room, out of the physical venue, to somebody who's joining us on Zoom, and somebody who has not a particularly Swedish voice. Alisa, will you do something for us now, please?
Well, I am honored to be here, and I say hello to everybody. I will read in English, just in English. I will see how it goes, and if you understand me. Those two poems are short and together, and they call it intersexual poems. And it's because we have the Rainbow Week, so I want to do that. Inter-eye, the distance from body to body is as vast as that from soul to soul. Altazor, Vicente Huidobro. The only body I have is another's, and in my boils the blood of some other's creature. What I am due to with this crooked tree, up my middle, other than watch it grow without straightening. Take road, run through my poisoned soul. See how within I am gonad and also womb. One of those two should devour the other. One is sun, the other is darkness without life. Swallow it, let's loose, struggle than enders, an angel without sex. I think I should read it in Spanish. The other one. Cut it, even if you will not separate it. Put it in this place so it is not, put it in this place so that it does not confuse this pain so deep, cannot express it, leave you. In the summer, that uterine summer, I used it to suck my own rolled tongue. Everything was safe and warm. It sometimes burned, many a mother dreaming my duplication in himself. When she saw me come out of there without the ringed tongue, she knew I was the white serpent of China's legend. With the appendix, they made a tunnel. And if now in air I might receive at least a little mandrake road. Before that, there was pain and a lot of rolled tongue to do not feel that cold in the crystal that gave shape to its dream matter. Thank you.
Gracias.
I will read it in Spanish another day.
Thank you, tak, Elisa. It was quite descriptive of the event in a sense when you spoke about your intersectional poems, and you had this idea of physical bodies and bodies that were yours and bodies that might not be yours, and then these kind of spiritual forces as well. It's a bit like what we're experiencing here now, where we have this hybrid event with a physical venue here, and then these people joining digitally from all over the world. So what part of the world should we return to now? And I think we'll go, we have at least 3 American voices here this evening, but one of those voices is coming to us from Ireland. So I think I'd like to go over to Wexford and ask Steve to read something for us, please.
Thank you, Dom. I'm going to read a poem based on a book I read recently called Full Tilt. And this is a book by Dervla Murphy. It was written long ago in the early 60s. It's just some context. She rode a bicycle from Calais in France all the way to India. It's called 3 Little Songs for Miss Don Q for Dervla Murphy. 1, it will always be 1963, which is why you still go by Miss. You will always be 31 years old, like Marcella the shepherdess, in your Afghan sheepskin coat if it is cold, and if it is hot, you're dueling with the sun, where no one else dared or cared. All out of sweat you've run. Rough and tough and used to hardships. There's no struggle you can't afford. A 25 caliber pistol, a distant fire, and a far-off sword. You live freely and ever so conscionably. You've learned poverty is no limit, it's just simplicity. 2, you're never alone. There is this difference between solitude and isolation. First and foremost, you've no phone. Exchanging a steed for your rose, you've no Sancho Panza with you, just a screwdriver with which you did the job, coping, not dying in the attempt, honestly not afraid to die. You said it yourself, and most importantly, you also believed it, and then we believed you. The lady with the bicycle, a storyteller now showing us what courage alone is and what it can accomplish. 3, up before sunrise once more, you've slept on a rug on the floor. After another breakfast of boiled eggs and bread, the road stretches out before you, you said. Every reader knows you're not turning back and why. Your journal does not lie. You sent us into Yugoslavia and its dark Wolverine woods, and through Afghanistan before the rain of bombs, before the Buddhas of Banyan were blasted, pending Purda in Persia, and the imagination of ink to be spilled in India. We now head faithfully toward the next question mark you see, on the map or in your mind. It's what could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It was wonderful to hear your own poetic language, but in your own poetic language to be talking about literature, but also to be talking so much about pragmatism, really. And there were so many practical elements to that poem. It was quite strange, actually, to hear of a gun and a sword, such violent implements, but just accepting them in that poem like any other tools in the way you delivered it. Okay, now I think I would like to return to Sweden, but while I'm here in Sweden, I'd like to hear an English voice. So I'm going to ask Lucy to come to the microphone for us, please. And Lucy is suddenly reaching down to her bag, going, "Oh, I hadn't got my piece of paper ready," but we can adjust that. That's easy enough.
I can stand on my toes.
Stepping close.
Okay, thank you, Dom. So this is a really new poem. It literally has been written today, so there are parts that need work still. But I thought this is a really nice space to be able to share work that's not quite finished. So I hope it's not too bad. It's called Zwischenzeit, which means meantime, like in the between time. My friend is training to run a marathon on his birthday. Today, he tells me, he ran his best ever time. Out along the Marmara, the inland sea, an average of 7 minutes, 37 seconds per mile, and 2 litres of water at the end of his run. An oceanic triumph until it wasn't. In the cab home, his whole body was shaking and he couldn't feel his hands. When I finally vomited, he says, I didn't make it to the bathroom. There's still vomit all over the walls. Well, I'm 2,000 miles away and I'm not going to go there to clean. Google says this is called hyponatremia, water intoxication, the swelling of cells, a drowning from the inside, and suddenly it is too much too soon. I had something amazing, he says, and then I poisoned myself. And all the while I kept thinking of what exists between one thing and another thing. Zwischen immer und nie, says Paul Celan. But I'm not trying to name drop or say that if I have to choose, I'm always inclined towards immer. It is the only way I know. There is cancer in his dog's spleen, he is saying, and he's moving into Colorado in spite of the obvious. And I'm not sure what to do with this story of vomit and water, the mutiny of the body that comes from wanting too much at the wrong time. But later, I'm sitting in the dark, watching a Belgian actor tell me to give my heart back to myself. And what if there is something amazing lodged hard in its ventricles, a lovely human being deep in its walnut lobes? My heart speaks like a child, making a child's statements of love. Ich lege mein Herz in deine Hände, I whisper to no one in particular, choosing language like it is a pocket, and all I am doing is hiding my keys inside. My friend writes to me, again, an afterthought. We are who we don't want to be as much as we are who we want to be. When did you get so wise, I reply. I'm still hallucinating, he says. It'll fade. Thank you.
A beautiful little tongue-in moment cheek there with, I'm not name dropping, but it's great. I mean, those again who might have seen some of the early events in the festival, some of the talks with the film directors have been really interesting, and how many of the directors are multidisciplinary artists. Actually, they're writers, they're poets themselves, they're artists, and science has become quite a theme in some of those talks with the film directors, those who've made video poems and experimental films. And so it's nice this evening to kind of hear that scientific medical metaphor coming into the event. It makes a link with some of those other things that we've been hearing in the festival as well. Okay, it's time to return to Wales, and I'd like to ask, well, it's not a Poems and Pints virgin because he's come to Carmarthen before, but he's losing his cherry online. So I'd like to ask Mark Linden to come and do something for us, please.
Virus versus us. An intangible, inaudible enemy invisibly invades. Insidious seems an anthropomorphic germ's encroachment. Virulence defines this incipient virus. That anathematic pathogen revels in hellish bedevilment. Anagrammatically vile, evil, heinousness is her sinister essence. Forever far from philanthropic looks a microscopic, misanthropic speck. Ever clever undercover, the disingenuous genius deviously cleaves our armor with ardor. Immorally seeking immortality, she possesses a sneaking proclivity for proximity and plans heists on hosts. Meanwhile, ill-fated all quail. We feel enfeebled, afeared afore adversity, an atavistic adversary. Dignity appears robbed, when vindictive iniquity surreptitiously steals unseen. Impending gloom looms, primes, dim dooms, grim time bomb. Malign pneumonia perniciously attacks, racks, wreaks chaos. What a demonic pandemic. Pandemonium emanates from ravaged, savage lungs which gasp, grasping, nebulous nothingness. Despised disease seizes, squeezes one wheezy, woozy, diddy biddy. 'Tis tantamount to a figurative noose, debilitating, devastating, its viciously constricting grip inexorably tightens. The writhing knot twists inextricably around her neck, next to Nix's, this brittle little lady's tenuous existence. Breathing decreases, ceases as she deceases. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to hear your voice again as a friend who hasn't heard you for a while, and for very many of the regulars, I'm sure, who recognize your style. It's nice to hear that again. Some real serendipity there. I mean, you were trying to create an atmosphere. You had the music going there in the background. That worked. As far as the visuals are concerned, I reckon that really is serendipity. I don't think you planned to look so menacing in your lighting. That was just an accident, but it suited the tone of the poem absolutely perfectly. So don't turn the lights on. Stay there, Mark. Okay. Right. I think I'd like to stay in Wales for the moment and ask Mel to do something for us, please.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. I'm busy pinning and unpinning, and suddenly realised that I need to pin myself. So I've got a new poem for you tonight. It's called Brinberian, and it's written for my dad, who was a very keen amateur botanist. So another science being brought into the room tonight. So, and it's something of an elegiac pantoum. Brinberian. I remember when we walked on that moor, you showed me bog orchid, bellflower and moss. The Preseli soared into the mist, blue, purple, green, bright with dew. You showed me bog orchid, bellflower and moss, our knees all sodden with peat, blue, purple, green, bright with dew, and your lens spying veins in the petals. Our knees all sodden with peat, squeezing water from sphagnum in drips. Your lens spying veins in the petals, your hand holding mine as I crouched. Squeezing water from sphagnum in drips, red spit dripping down from your lips, my hand holding yours as I crouched. Where did those pills come from? I cried. Red spit dripping down from your lips, I wept for your success as you died. Where did those pills come from? I cried, knowing ashes would soar outside. I wept for your success when you died, as the Preselis soared into mist, watched ashes soaring outside, and I remember when we walked on this moor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mel. A beautiful tribute. And it was wonderful talking about your childhood, talking about that reversal of relationships between parents and children, and where the responsibility lies, and yes, maybe the horrible weight of that responsibility towards the end, and yet the eternity linking both those different pieces in your and your father's history in the Presellis, and that's what's solid. Well, not solid, beautiful, misty, and I'm waiting for the watercolor painting of it actually. But yes, thank you, Mel. I'm going to come back into the room now because I can see a man walking around, and I'm thinking, well, why let him sit down? He's stood up, so I'm going to ask Philip to come to the microphone and do something for us, please.
Thank you, Dom, and that would teach me. As always, I only have my phone. It's not sort of this thing of preferring technology to papers. It's just being crap at planning. I'm going to read only in Swedish this time. I've read one of the bug poems before, I think, and this is the last written, but the first in the series of bug poems about bugs in situations they can't really grasp, really. So this is the ladybird, nyckelpiga. Gullhöna, gullhöna klättrar först från det varma vallmobladet där hon nyss har släckt sin törst och vaggar sakta lyckligt fram på väg mot nästa framgång. Vind mot en djupröd och prickig sköld så att benen måste greppa fast om skälken och en köld som biter ont, de ej berör, en nyckelpigas lovsång. Blåeld och blåst göddar hennes glöd och är bränsle för ett irrande som ej är närt av nöd. Aj mer av lättja eller lust, 3 benpar 12 kompasser. Gulfärgat enkelt men säger klick och riktar hennes många ben om blott ett ögonblick. Gör maskrosen en meter bort till gulbladstuns madrasser. Där blir det rast och från blommans mast så ser hon hela havet som en lugn entusiast som snart kan vara på väg igen mot ditten och mot datten. Ute på fältet finns inga lås, men pigan äger ändå alla ängsnycklar som lås. Hon sitter där just nu på en i lila symbios. Men tröttnar snart nog, flyg, nej. Hon stannar, mätt på vatten. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. It's wonderful to hear the Swedish language, of course. We are in Tranås, we are in Sweden, and it's great to have that sense of where we are. And so beautifully delivered, so gently delivered, worthy of the Ladybird, certainly, in terms of its delivery. But I do wonder how you can claim how certain that poem was when you say it's the most recently written, but the first of the Bug series, because as you continue, who knows where that will end up in the series. Surely you can't be entirely certain that will end up as the first in the series. Philip is nodding his head at me. No, he's shaking his head at me going, Dominic, you have no idea what you're talking about. That will definitely be the first in the series. But in terms of that gentle delivery, which was beautiful, it's also perhaps a time to sound check. And just ask if somebody outside of Tranås can unmute and say, is our sound okay at the physical stage? Because it's very difficult for us to gauge this end.
Yeah, Dom, I did put a message up on chat that you're a bit low.
I can hear you okay, and I could hear Philip okay and Lucy.
I heard everyone okay.
You could do with the volume higher from Tranås.
Okay, no, that okay. We'll pair back. I think that it sounds, from the representative view that I got, it sounds like that perhaps it's local contact, local connections that are having a problem rather than from this end. So, because a lot of people can hear it well. So I'll keep shouting at you as I always do. In the meantime, I'm going to stay in Sweden. Again, I'm going to go outside the room and ask Linda if she'd like to address the mic for us, please.
I just need to find a poem again.
somewhere on the phone. If you knew how much she tried to stop those tears from falling hours before you were going home, when she was saying goodbye, would you really go outside the door? If you know how much she tried to stop those tears just when she was going home, would you really let her onto that train? If you knew all of this, would you hold her closer, tell her how much you love her yet again? Would you understand how much she really loves you?
Thank you, Linda. That eternal theme, the breakdown in communication, misunderstanding within relationships, and if only we'd known, if only perhaps we look back and would have made a slightly different decision. Okay, I'm going to stay in Sweden. I'm going to stay in the room, and I'm going to ask Martin if he'd like to come and address the microphone, please.
This is an unpublished, not yet illustrated kid's story, and the first ever performance of it. It's called "And the Giant Grew." The giant grew concerned about growing too big. The first he had noticed that his boots were getting smaller, or so it seemed, and they didn't make boots any bigger than the ones he wore. Before long, they were too small, and he was forced to trudge on bare feet. The second thing, and this the giant didn't really notice, because I mean, who does, was that he grew into his ego, and for a few days they were a perfect match, him and his ego. However, it did not take many turns of sun and moon before his ego, relative to his body, shrank into a small stone at the core of his being, and turned into something that he came to resent. The day came when the giant had outgrown any semblance of clothing. Creation of fleece and fur came and went, the local supply spent. For some time he draped his nakedness in the rotting skin of a stranded whale. When it fell apart, the wind played among the hairs on his back. Ours was not a very happy giant. He felt just as lost as the M in mnemonic, overlooked and forgotten in spite of his size. And the giant grew bigger still. Soon his head was among the clouds, dark, dark, dark clouds, cumulus hats that made his head hurt and his hair look funny. As one night fell, our giant stretched his neck and came face to face with the man in the moon. Voices carry poorly in the vacuum of space. So what these two lonely spoke of was lost to all but lip-reading astronomers, and these are as scarce as ever-growing giants. Once having kicked off from earth and gravity, the giant wrapped himself in the blanket of night and fell asleep. There he grows to this day, slowly catching up to the expanse of the universe. Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. It's there's so many great lines in there, so many great thoughts and things that make you wonder. I love the missing M in mnemonic, but the lip reading astronomers really struck me. Do you know what I mean? It was I'm not quite sure what that age group is for a children's book. But you know, when we talk about children's cartoons having like an adult theme as well as a children's theme, we're going to struggle with this one. But it is presented as a short story for children, but full of wonderful thought-provoking stuff. You walked away from the microphone too early, Martin, because I really hoped you were going to read some Swedish, but maybe we'll get a chance later, because it would be nice. As I've said, I would like everybody to keep their pieces to a certain level, but it would be nice to hear a little bit more Swedish, as this is where the festival is broadcasting from. Okay, in the meantime, let's go back to Maggie.
Yeah. Good evening, Dom and everyone else. I would like to say that Dominic, 4 weeks ago, gave me a name, Pandora, and to write about Pandora. Well, Susan and I sat at the kitchen table, and the first clue that came up was, the first word was pand, and the second word was aura. In a crossword. In a crossword. And I thought, well, that's got to be something to find. So I am named Pandora, with an indescribable aura, a hard woman to tame, possibly due to my name. I ask, is Pan my mentor or a goatish tempter? Like Pan, I play tricks on the weak, whose ill-gotten gains they seek. But I was given a box of glittery gold, instructed not to open, not to be bold. Temptation overpowered, I became weak. I only desired one little peek. Key in hand, it trembled and shook. Should be no different than opening a book. A surge of passion engulfed my soul. Elation sensations were making me howl as I lifted the lid. Tears scalded my eyes. Greed, poverty, hatred, plus death clouded skies. There could be no reconstruction of my selfish destruction. The only saving grace, hope, remained in a place. Mythological monikers are all very well if, in the mood, they can transport you to hell. Created as punishment to all humankind, bearing gifts of devastation, devoid of hope entwined. Were my parents, when selecting my name, that I would carry such a burden of shame? No. Hope sits my shoulders in this turbulent world. I'll toss it like confetti. Create a new world. I took the burden and survived, thanks to hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm not going to go too far into the explanations of the workshop that we were doing and the exercise. Suffice it to say that you owned that name, though you couldn't resist going into the history of Pandora, and I guess that's what's going to happen. I love the way that you made it relevant. I love the way that we finished with hope. When it's a story that we know is so terrible, and of course it was well constructed, as your work always is, Maggie. Okay, I'm going to go for one of those American voices now. A friend I haven't seen for a long time. I think this virtual visit to Wales may be the first time he's been in Wales since we were last together at the summer school. Mike, are you there? Can you do something for us, please?
Okay, am I finally unmuted? Okay, thank you. When I consider how my liver is spent and all the drugs I stopped doing just now in a handicapped stall with a young beauty who made the mistake of liking one of my poems and who looks into me while I talk about my gracious lonely wife and pull up pics of my children their faces like 4 glowing lanterns on a cheap incandescent string. I consider visiting my father. I'll bring a new Bruins decal for his headstone and tell him, I think he's wrong. There is a God, but a God doubled over with abdominal cramps, a God with a grave sense of humor. I'll tell him I've willed my ashes to be repurposed in the manufacture of pink Huffy bicycle seats. My tattooed skin tanned and stretched for binding limited editions. Tell him he isn't missing much. The new depression meds aren't any better. And tell him for the 1000th time, I'm sorry I let him fall, walking from the toilet back to the bed from which he would never rise again. That somehow his body, halved and hollowed, was still too much for me to support. Thanks.
Raw and personal. It started with the writer talking about writing and then drew us into that writer's life. And you owned the microphone there, Mike. Sorry, Mike owned the mic. But I mean, that was just an amazing delivery. It seemed like we hear so many things about how you need to set yourself up when you're doing a Zoom meeting and how you look best and how you might always end up with your face right in front of the screen. But that looks like somebody who knew whatever was happening with Zoom, with this kind of digital transmission, that he took control of that performance, because it was an amazing, amazing delivery. So thanks, Mike. It's lovely to see you again and to hear your voice. I'm going to go for one more reading now before we go into our break. And I'm back in the room and I'm going to ask Milica to come and give us some poetry in Serbian.
Glič, veštica. Ja sam glič u partijalnom univerzumu. Ja sam i čestica i talas, i bitanka i princeza i zmaj. Loše sam isprogramirana, nedovoljno pokorna i poslušna za sredinu u kojoj sam rasla. Kao kopriva među ukrasnim biljem koju želiš da iščupaš, ljuti intelekt koji smatraš za korov i pošast. Bag u sistemu, nepodnošljiva greška bez Boga i domovine. Sa svešću u svojim vrlinama i manama, bez grudi u 3 dimenzije. Čitam knjige, teorijske, teške, mračne i kritične. Ne delim boje na polove i vozim hokejaške klizaljke. Nisam parče mesa do dokona popodne, buka je moja uspavanka. Nosim ponosno svoje ideje, misli, snove, umesto lažnog poprosja.
Glitch. I am a glitch in a patriarchal universe. I am a particle and a wave, a badass and a princess and a dragon. I am programmed badly, unsatisfactorily, submissive and obedient from the environment in which I grew up, like a nettle amongst decorative flowers that you want to pull out. Spicy intellect, which you consider a weed and post a bug in the system. Unbearable error. Without fatherland and God, with my conscience and about my merits and demerits, without boobs in 3D. I read thick, heavy books, theoretic, dark and critic. I don't divide colors by the gender, and I ride hockey skates like a girl extreme. I am not a piece of meat for your lazy afternoon. Noise is my lullaby. I carry proudly through my life, my dreams, my ideas, my thoughts, instead of a big pair of fake tits.
Okay. 5 minuta. Tebi je to 5 minuta cijelog života u vizualnoj umetnosti, tebi je to 5 minuta 6 godina Akademije umetnosti, tebi je to 5 minuta iskustva, pogrešaka i pogodaka, tebi je to 5 minuta svih oslušanih predavanja, tebi je to 5 minuta svih besplatnih plaćenih radionica, tebi je to 5 minuta svih razgovora sa umetnicima i profesorima, tebi je to 5 minuta svih odgledanih izložbi i iščitanih statementa, tebi je to 5 minuta svih iščitanih knjiga i pogledanih filmova, tebi je to 5 minuta svog formalnog i neformalnog stručnog usavršavanja, tebi je to 5 minuta svih sati rada u Photoshopu, tebi je to 5 minuta svih savladanih veština i programa, tebi je to 5 minuta svih određenih brainstorminga, tebi je to 5 minuta svih iscrtanih mapa uma, tebi je to 5 minuta svih započetih pa odbačenih ideja, tebi je to 5 minuta svih dobro i zlonamernih kritika i komentara, tebi je to 5 minuta svih položenih praktičnih i teorijskih ispita, tebi je to 5 minuta svih grupnih samostalnih izložbi projekata, tebi je to 5 minuta 6 godina Akademije umetnosti, tebi je to 5 minuta cijelog života u vizualnoj umetnosti. Thank you.
Well, you said I don't know if I can do it. I certainly don't know if I can do it justice. It's Serbian, Elisa, by the way, who was asking for the language on the chat. Okay. It's 5 minutes for you. A whole life in visual arts. It's 5 minutes for you. 6 years of Academy of Art. It's 5 minutes for you. Experience and errors and hits. It's 5 minutes for you. All classes attended. It's 5 minutes for you. All free and paid workshops. It's 5 minutes for you. All talks with artists and professors. It's 5 minutes for you. All seen exhibitions and read statements. It's 5 minutes for you. All read books and watched movies. It's 5 minutes for you. All formal and non-formal education. It's 5 minutes for you. Hours spent on work in Photoshop. It's 5 minutes for you. All mastered skills and programs. It's 5 minutes for you. All done brainstorming. It's 5 minutes for you. All drawing mind maps. It's 5 minutes for you. All extracted then discarded ideas. It's 5 minutes for you. All good and menace and critics and commentary. It's 5 minutes for you. All past practical and theoretical exams. It's 5 minutes for you. All group and solo exhibitions and projects. It's 5 minutes for you. 6 years of Academy of Art. It's 5 minutes for you. A whole life of visual arts. Tack så mycket. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break. Take this moment to stay away from the screen if you want to. Give yourself a bit of a break from the. Yeah. I've got most. I made notes at halftime, and I think I've got everybody who's in the room now. Too loud? Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to say, those of you who enjoyed Militsa's wonderful slam performance, we're only into the 3rd day of the festival. There are another 6 days to come. There are lots of events. I won't give any spoilers, but you might have the chance to hear some of that reading again in a slightly different way later in the festival. So I'm just trying to keep you intrigued and engaged. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's read in the first half for the respect that you've shown for each other, and everybody keeping their performances tight and not too long, and giving everybody a voice and a chance to perform and entertain us all. And so we're going to kick off the second half by, for the second time, going back to Ireland. And I'd like to ask Deirdre to come and do something, please.
Thanks, Dom. Yeah, I'd like to share. It's a poem called Patriots, in inverted commas. It was actually written for Anti-Fascist Culture Day, which was hosted by a group of Irish poets, musicians, writers, and so on. But I've added a little bit in the Irish language, Raveraw, which is an introduction, but it's basically an introduction written as an epilogue, if you know what I mean. So here's the Raveraw. Sitje tefel mwe. Eg ferkend huas na realty. Shodi gyala is spera na hihe. Mars. Jarag agus e gliskarnach. Os makion oljocht na hihe. Ak mar na spera. Tal gach rud eg ahru. Tá na scáhanna ag fásach, na mactíre ag fannacht. Shocking. I'll just translate that bit. Seated outside, looking up at the stars. Bright jewels in the night sky. Mars, red and glittering. Over my head, the beauty of the night. But like the skies, everything is changing. The shadows are growing. The wolves are waiting. Beware. Once I saw a documentary, Los Rojos, the anti-fascist forces in Spain's bloody civil war. Exiled to Angoulême in France, rounded up by Nazis and put on a train. Realizing on the way that the train was not deporting them back to Spain. Los Rojos, who once fought the fascists at home, were now being herded to a Nazi concentration camp. The words of an old man, just a boy at the time, as he finished his harrowing tale, you cannot imagine what it was like, haunt me still. I thank the gods I cannot imagine. They like to say it could never happen again, but I don't believe that. Zionist Israel treats Palestinians as the Nazis once treated their ancestors. In China, there are concentration camps for the Uyghur people. In Trump's America, Black men are killed with 7 shots in the back or a knee in the neck, cutting off oxygen. And a president praises a white supremacist killer. Emboldened, the new fascists march openly, flaunting racial hatred and poisonous notions of racial purity, calling themselves patriots. Here in our land, whose stories, myths, stones, rivers, and language I love, so-called patriots march on our streets under pretense of seeking freedom, aping the fundamentalists and fascists of a land 3,000 miles away, founded on genocide and enriched by slavery. I spent time behind high grey walls, giving birth, but not mothering, banished, judged, and shamed, where the older women who had gone before me were abused and brutalized. And you want a white, holy Catholic Ireland? No gay rights, no women's rights, no minority rights, no freedom of religion? And you tell me you march for freedom, that you are a patriot? I see who you are, wolves in sheep's clothing. And although I do not speak sheep, and you are the one who uses bars to communicate, you seem not to see the irony of your position. Be careful, you followers of love and light. Be careful who you follow down the road of alleged freedom. Do not ingest this poison, for all too soon it will be you they come for. Have you considered what it is that will be awakened in the Great Awakening? The monster, chained in the deep, has already been set free. It is being fed and strengthened, and it will bite the hand of all who feed it in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. It's a pleasure, a joy to hear the Irish language among the other languages we've already heard this evening, the English, the Swedish, the Welsh, the Serbian, and to hear the social commentary, hear a political voice that is so representative of the arts so very often, and delivered in your great storytelling voice, which gives it another level. So thanks, Dee. I'm going to come back to the physical venue now in Tronos and ask Joachim to come and do something for us, please.
I shall read two short ones. The mirror never lies. What the hell? An ape. Teleskop. Jag kollade i mitt teleskop och såg en massa roliga gubbar på månen. Allihop gav mig fingret. Thank you.
Thank you, Joka. A great English language delivery, which was shorter than the Swedish. You know, we measure these things in minuscule elements. And thank you so much for the sign language to explain the Swedish poem to the rest of us who are not Swedish speaking. I'm going to stay here and ask Magnus to come and do something for us, please.
Poundland, Swansea. Andra våningen på Waterstones bokhandel. Fika smakar gott. Sällskapet är trevligt. Maria Antoinette uppmanar oss på affischen. Let them eat cake. Vi följer intresserat det folkliga livet utanför Poundland. Vår överblick är god. En ung kille lutar mot väggen. Hälen lätt, lyftlig Polyklaitos spjutbärare. De flesta män bär träningsoverall som vore de redo för olympiska insatser. Några är klädda för kontorsarbete, äter sandwich, unnar sig en cigg. Unga mödrar med barnvagnar stannar upp och pratar med släktingar och vänner. En snattare med snabba steg och 2 snutar efter sig kommer inte undan. En gatumusikant med synt spelar rock och evergreens. 2 fyllon sjunger med och önskar sig låtar. Det rör sig i en vinglig koreografi där det ömsom tänder en rök, tar en klunk, morsar på någon och hänger med armarna om varandra för att förklara livets mening. Siktlinje. Muskelminnes neuromuskulära system. Ungdomens bågskytte. Pilens siktlinje. Instängdhetens negativism. Dystopiska fiskars glänsande fjäll. Barockträdgårdens siktlinje. Bankvärldens dimmiga penningtvättare. De grå eminensernas ljusskygga maktfullkomlighet. Kulan skär en ballistisk siktlinje. And now in English. Poundland, Swansea. Second floor of Waterstone bookstore. The fika is good, and the company too. Maria Antoinette encourages us on the poster. Let them eat cake. We follow with interest people passing by outside Poundland. Our view is good. A young guy leaning against the wall. Heel slightly lifted like Polyklaitos spear-bearer. Most men wear joggers, as if they were ready for Olympic action. Some are dressed for office work, eating sandwich, treating themselves with a ciggy. Young mothers with pushchairs, talking with family and friends. A fleet-footed shoplifter with 2 cops, hot on his heel, don't get away. A busker with synthesizer plays rock and evergreen. 2 winos singing along and requesting songs. They move around in a wobbly choreography, alternately lighting a fag, taking a sip, greeting someone, their arms wrapped around each other, explaining the meaning of life. Line of sight, the neuromuscular system of muscle memory, the archer of youth, the arrows, line of sight. The negativism, the confinement, the shiny scales, the dystopian fish, the Baroque gardens, line of sight. The banking was devotion, money launderers, the grey eminence, shady aphorisms, the bullet cuts a ballistic line of sight.
Tack så mycket, Magnus. It's great to be here this evening. And to be honest, the group that are gathered here and particularly online is largely English speaking, very much a strong Welsh presence. And so it's really wonderful to hear Swedish here, but also to hear a poem written by a Swedish man in Wales. And it's kind of that juxtaposition of what we're all doing now, virtually coming into Sweden, and then a man reading a poem about when he visited Wales physically. And Siglinja is just such a beautiful word. And line of sight doesn't do it justice in translation, for sure. But a great poem and a wonderful delivery, both in Swedish and in English, Magnus. Tack så mycket. Okay, I'm going to return to Wales now and ask Jenny if she'd like to address the microphone, please.
Gosh, I wasn't expecting that. I have to find something. Sorry, I just wasn't expecting to read a poem.
Jenny, I noticed people had come into the room, and I kind of assumed that they were.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I will, but I have to find one because I hadn't.
Yeah, don't look. And I'm going to move on. We'll call another reader into the room, and then we'll come back to you next. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm going to ask Dave Owen to do something for us, please.
Okay, thanks, Dom. I'll keep it very, very short. This is from my current unlaunched book, and the title is actually the first line. In the silence of October sunshine, distant from the seething cities, beneath the gentle mantle of the down-drifting leaves, and bathing in the splash of slanting sunlight on floors, in fields and forests, he watches the world curl up to sleep, spiraling down into somnolence, letting everything go, but its looming fears, its anxious, restless dreams. Yeah, thank you.
Short, maybe, Dave, but a very long journey and a profound journey. I think it kind of describes your journey from the urban to the rural, both physically and maybe poetically as well, in terms of your influences, which I'm sure existed while you were in the urban environment, but which have been so wonderfully nurtured since you've been in West Wales. Okay, Jenny, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm looking at some poems now. Right. This is The Little Cakes and the Rose in Winter. It's quite long. It's based on a real story of a little girl who's, when after her mother died, her auntie basically abducted her, and it took her father years to get her back, because they spread all sorts of rumors about him. And she was called Rose. So The Little Cakes and the Rose in Winter. It was a time of sweetness for little Rose, and she was very sweet. She was small and very fond of being quiet. Long ago, the aunt in black had come and taken little Rose in her grasp. It was springtime, and she fed her little cakes with pink icing and sugar roses. "Ah, Rose," she said, fixing her beady eyes on the small girl, "how pretty you are." And she placed her in a cot with her two watchful daughters, tall as sentinels in the small hot room. "Now you live with me," she said,
with satisfaction. The traffic rattled outside Rosa's window. She gazed out at the mist curled over the road and wondered where the sea had gone. "You must eat," said the aunt in black, and gave her little cakes, little cakes. Now it was summer, and the sun shone in the dirty city. It was hot and smelt of frying food. Her cousins wore black. They sang to her, and the room was as cozy as a bird's nest. The little Rose played with the cakes and with her tall cousins. She learnt a new language from the crow-black aunt, who was sharp and whose name was like needles. "Dirty Daddy," she said, when the father was allowed to see her, travelling miles on his quest, bringing her strawberries. "Dirty Daddy." The father wept, but little Rose laughed and kissed him and put the strawberries one by one in her small rose mouth. When the aunt saw red marks on the little face, her sharp eyes snapped, her thin tongue sharpened around the pleasure of malice, blame, and accusation like a curse. But when the red washed off, the father did not open his lips, did not make a sound. He put his hard eyes on the aunt and looked her up and down. Then it was autumn. The light thickened, and the rubbish blowing in the street turned gold. The little Rose loved her small doll with yellow hair and a small nose. Her face was blue and red and green. The felt tip colours did not wash off, but little Rose thought she was beautiful. At night she sang sweetly, rocking her dolly in a sparkling shawl. The street lights seeped into the overheated room through thin white curtains. And now it was winter. There was ice in the big city outside. The little Rose slept in her small cot, listened to her cousins quarrelling in the night about boys, about cake, about boys. When she looked out of the window, there were cats slinking hungry in the shadows. She held her dolly tight, humming into her hair. All around the whine of sirens, blue lights on and off and on. When she stamped her feet in the day outside, breathing smoke in the cold air, she hardly remembered the seashore or gulls screaming in fresh salt air, the park full of flowers. The father came and went and came again. The little Rose's eyes were shiny with happiness. He brought her pomegranates, honey, rosewater, to remind her of sunshine. It was a big, dirty city. Time was passing. Rose still lived with the aunt in black, still lived with the quarrelling sisters. One day, a bird sang on the window ledge. There were yellow flowers in the shops, and little Rose knew it was spring. She jumped with brightness, wide-eyed. She wanted to know about things, about summer in other places, about the sea, about her father, about the flowers in the park, about the place where people sang when they spoke. The black aunt frowned, gave her little cakes, little cakes, little cakes. Yeah. That's it.
And you know, the most amazing thing about the Fringe Festival, and those who have ever been here will know this wonderful community that gathers here and exists. This international, interdisciplinary community that stays together and not just performs and entertains each other, but exchanges all sorts of cultural ideas as well as artistic ideas. This is happening now. There's a small group here, a very small group, who are the core of the delivery of the festival here. But of course, we have this great international community online also. And I'm hoping that there's an intersection between those communities. Certainly, there's a lot of chatter in the break between people about their writing, about each other's outputs, their creative outputs. And the long thing I'm getting around to actually is I was talking to Lucy earlier on today about the idea of the graphic novel as a as something that could give voice to refugees. And I'm listening to you now, Jen, who I know has a great interest in that area as well, but also this idea of the contemporary fairy tale, which is very much how I felt that delivery was then, about some terrible, terrible situations. So I just want to say thank you, Jen, for that great poem, and linking things in together. Okay, I'm going to ask somebody to read now, somebody who only 7 hours ago delivered an absolutely awe-inspiring Passion of Words event at the Fringe Festival. He read for 45 minutes, and he read from Colombia at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm amazed at his stamina, that he's even still awake now. But perhaps you could do something for us as part of Pilsner Poesy, George.
Unmute, George.
Unmute. I'm here. Okay. First of all, Jenny, that was an extraordinary poem. I'm still hearing it after it finished. So I hope I don't seem distracted, but I was really, really moved by its simplicity and its beauty. So to honor this fellowship, I just want to give this one short poem as a toast. This poem is for Derek Coyle. At the last Poets and Pints, Derek read a poem, and I mentioned to him that it reminded me of a poem by Sachiverell Sitwell called Frangipani. Then I tried to find the bloody poem, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and I think he published it as a limited edition. So, since I couldn't find it, I wrote it. And here it is for Derek Coyle, Frangipani. The Andean toucan's bill is blue. Above a splay of petals, canals, troughs for the last of the jeweled dew. The spider spreads and bright pollen falls. The sky has pecked out each nimbus thread to nest the sun in an opaque haze. In the cypress grove, where warmth is bled, Frangipani blooms like distant days. Thanks.
Each nimbus thread to nest the sun. What a line, George. What a line. Absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. And could there have been a more obvious reference to the commentary I was just making about the intersection between communities, and then you have this wonderful response to Derek's poem. I don't think Derek is here this evening, sadly. He's not among our crowd, but that is the international connections that we're making between poets. It wasn't scheduled, that wasn't planned, that was just wonderful serendipity by George. I'd like to ask Bengt Björklund to do something for us now, please.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. I'm going to read two poems tonight. The first one, because the event is in Sweden, I'm going to read in Swedish. Frostens vita valpar ligger helt stilla när vintern föder. I lägret brinner tilliten. Långt in i den sjungande plåtkaminen just innan polisen kommer. Det finns dagar i enkelt ljus, hoppfulla dagar i möte med det som ändå återstår. Allt eller inget kan de inte förstå när glöden falnar och det utmätta lägger sig till ro. Först slipades spadarna, sedan alla andra grävdon, spetsskiftnycklar, bälgar, allt som kunde vrida sig. Det finns de som finner sig i den slags ordning som alltid varit grym. Andra lever vid sidan om. Kaminen har tystnat, hundarna sover på golvet. I dessa rader finns det en utsikt över dagar utan nåd. And the English poem goes like this. It's a poem that ends with a pint. Poems of pints. This moment I fall with heavy breath ticking in the old memory basket is long overdue. The sun is just light to the old man, moving his brittle bones in the shadows. The sharp light that meets the eye squander its shiny content in old echoes fading. So many steps to contemplate, jigsaw puzzles in need of more pieces call for him to ponder. A certain ceremony of greeting the wounded earth finds him lost in a struggle to count for more than one. Solemnity is his hideout, behind the shed of all fear gone, listening to the gossip, the rolling emptiness of the sea. There are birds in the aftermath, stoic men attempting what no man has achieved, lonely women singing in the surf. Old man by his pint, downs severity with hot futility, rendering night a glow that will be gone by morning. Thank you.
Tack, Bengt. It's wonderful to hear your voice. You have a unique delivery, and that delivery is common to both your Swedish and your English, and yet you sing in very different ways in Swedish and in English. Your English is, clearly more free verse, and yet you have that Bengt Björklund rhythmic delivery. But the Swedish, so much more. Well, perhaps I hear so much more rhythm because I'm not understanding the meaning. But thank you for finishing with a pint. Very, very good of you, and it's great to hear your voice and your contribution this evening. Okay, there's an Andrew in the room who I don't think I recognize, and I'm not sure whether Andrew was intending to read or not. But would you like to unmute your mic now, Andrew, and contribute if you wish to, or tell me that you don't want to?
No, that's okay. Can you see me? Hello?
Hello. We can hear you, but not see you.
Okay, how do I, right.
Don't worry about that. The voice is fine.
Just read.
Hear you.
Okay, I'll just read then. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can see you and hear you now.
Okay, right. Well, I wasn't expecting to, but I will do. I've just got quite a short one. So this is called Hanging on the Telephone. The risks are high. I may never get through. I might not have the right information. I might not understand. That's a fairly high probability. Not because I'm stupid, I'm not.
It's just that there are things to trip you up. Language, terminology, systems. It's just a train, a plane, a builder, a new potato. Toe tapping, dancing soon, so uplifting. Dark thoughts, I don't need them. Where am I? In the queue? I have no idea. Has anybody? How much longer? Starting to think about aborting. Not yet, but it's at the back of my mind. I have other things to do. I gave myself plenty of time, but still, it's a worry. 40 minutes. I won't get it back. 50 maybe. 55. Who knows? 60. That's too long. It's only a simple question I have, but there is nowhere to ask it. It's not my mistake. Someone should listen. Please. The music is getting repetitive now. At least have a DJ to tell me who they are. Tell me the weather forecast. Give me the news headlines. Even special offers. Although that might make me annoyed. It would definitely. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Andrew. I loved it. I loved the flicking, the distraction. You know, we were going there and then we were going here and we tried to hold on to it, but then our thoughts were taken somewhere else in that moment. Well, not that moment. Fucking 60 minutes that were stolen from our lives. An experience we all identify with, we empathize with. But the way that your mind went when you were there, what you could have been doing, what you're not doing, what's going on. It was, yeah, really, the structure made it really difficult to keep pace with you, you know, which was absolutely fantastic. So thank you for that, Andrew. I hope you're going to join us again. I think this is the first time you've joined Poems and Pints. I hope you'll be back and join us on another occasion. Now I'm going to ask Jackie if she'd like to do something for us, please.
Hello, here we are. I'd just like to, before I read a very short piece, I'd just like to say to all you guys over there in Tronos that you're doing a fantastic job, because your festival at home is absolutely wonderful. And I know there's a long way to go yet, but it's really, really going well. I've got a very short poem. It was said on the news tonight. There's loads of news about new lockdowns and stuff here in the UK. Particularly in England, but it has been said here in Wales by the Welsh government that they are now considering again another national lockdown. We hope they don't do it. There's lots of parts of Wales are locked down, but we don't want a national one over here on the west, especially. This is a poem about touch, which seems quite appropriate. I think I've read it here before at the beginning, back in March. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I read another one about touch, but this is about touch. You touch me. We swim together in the rising sea as waves roll over warm sand. You touch me on high mountain walks where cold winds swirl around rocky summits. You touch me where trees stand tall and fresh leaves tremble in a warm spring breeze. You touch me where snow falls and the frost steals our breath, sucks the icy air inside. You touch me when our fire burns hot on dark frozen nights, keeping the cold away. You touch me when we look up in quiet of midnight to full moon and countless stars. You touch me as Rodrigo's hot rhythms pulse through tempos in my heart. You touch me as silk shivers on skin in chill of dawn, and my mind rises from dreams. You touch me where shadows of trees are outlined on walls, curtains fan in the breeze. You touch me in the morning when I search your face. Sunshine plays over us and you touch me. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Thanks, Jax. Yes, it's a poem that some of us have heard before, and a poem that's about clearly physicality. But it has an extra poignancy, I feel, today in this international gathering, because fleeting it may be, but the references to landscape early in that poem make the geography of the poem so relevant. People are considering what's happening in different parts of the world.
Thank you.
Richard, would you like to do something for us?
Who, me? Yeah, I can do. Okay, this is, can you hear me all right? Cool. This is called Future. It's new, but I think it's okay. It's called Future. There was a time when the future was clear, unexplored territories full of promise, a map undrawn, sparkling gemstones bright, unwritten adventures, a heroic odyssey, with beginning, middle and end, a romance, a glorious tale of magic and wonder. There would be drama and adversity, but the sun would shine forever on the new world constructed, on the art appreciated, on the ideas communicated. There was a time when the future was hopeless, choked lungs screaming into a void, hearts broken, tears shed, a dark tunnel of crumbling frost-baked earth, descending at last to an isolation cell. Caged by flesh, tasting only dust and acrid smoke, every involuntary shudder an effort, every ache a reminder of clear air lost, to the terrible weight of ruin and wreckage, fear and failure, cowardice and culpability. There was a time when the future was defiant, a rage at injustice where ideals were crushed, when the innocent were torn asunder at the whim of creatures barely human, scraps of satisfaction shorn in fleshy strips. Resisting the filthy embrace, refusal to be cowed, deserting the spiteful seas of the crowd, embraced freakish isolation, ugliness as aesthetic, reflecting the crude and bestial mass, clawing for pennies and scraps. There was a time when the future was gone, all was exhausted resignation, where tears and heartbreak forgotten were replaced by despair and inertia. Sleep the only comfort, dreaming visions of the past. Then it was the future. Time to begin. The past a labyrinthine alley rent by barbed thorns and stained with the puddling fluids of eviscerated naivety. No time to think of futures, only now, only goals, no gods, no dreams, no hopes, no rage, no clarity, only this here now, and what can be made of it. Skull.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for your optimism. It's not the first poem this evening that has spoken of such optimism and the now and the potential that we have. Like Deirdre, you recognise the problems that we have, and yet right from the beginning, right from the moment there was a map and drawn, I connected that to all of us, of course, and the potential that we all have from different places spread across the map to redraw it between ourselves. Okay, Matt, are you with us?
Yes. Hi, all right?
All right, man. Are you going to do something for us then, please?
Yeah, great.
Great, brother.
First of all, thank you. And then also at 6:30, when I signed on, I never thought I'd be speaking in Sweden and all of these other countries. So thank you very much. Okay, the first piece is called Space Station, and it follows on really from the previous poem. Okay, so this is Space Station. We slice solar winds, sail orbit halos, watch from the cupola window on the world. Photons to retina, in brightened abyss. 6 panes catch our breath, 6 panes that show a bow electric rim of light, crescent in night. Fingers touch glass, it marks our print. Homo sapien. Have we come too far, too soon, taking passage from canyon floors through storms, wind-driven deserts, ice-racked ranges? We stand on lookout towers, exalted and supreme over silicon cities. Once, before fierce wars of progress, we stood at the ocean's edge, burning under the atoll sun, then drifted in currents, plunging to the shining coral bed. We watch as sealed sentinels, dry and racing, through perishing darkness, fearing ruin. Thank you. And then the second and the final piece is very short, and this is Cosmos. From static, we make our slow Rosetta. Linger lone in void of dark. No one can hear us in these rooms of silence. This is our language of stars, fingers of intricate play and movement. There are lights, faint and far. As moths, we are drawn and dance. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Matt. I think those scientific references haven't really been made since we were listening to Lucy earlier on this evening, though Lucy's were more medical than scientific maybe. But I'm looking at Laura now. Laura Bianco is the curator of the film festival, and Laura has been interviewing film directors who have films at the festival this year. All of these events are live on YouTube, and then they're staying on YouTube. So if you feel that you missed something, don't worry. You can go back and you can watch it again on YouTube. It is a very interdisciplinary festival, and Matt's poems are making me think about the science and how that has influenced many of the filmmakers and the experimental films that they produced during the festival. There's a great interview with a filmmaker called Ian Gibbons from Australia, who has a massive science background, as well as a spoken word background before he moved into filmmaking. I really urge you to go and look that one up on YouTube, one of the first events that took place in the festival. And it really, emphasizes the interdisciplinary nature of everything that we're doing here. While you're here, Matt, I don't know, would you like to give your journal a bit of a push? Because I'm sure there are lots of poets here around the world who might be interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, cheers, thank you. I run a journal called Black Bow, and we're on to our third book currently. I tend to have about 3 periods per year where people send their work. If you want to send your poems, it's very, very much focused on short pieces. Go to www.blackbough, that's B-O-U-G-H, blackbowpoetry.com. It's also on Twitter, and the site on Twitter is very, very active. We've got a poetry festival every single week on a Tuesday, and it's under hashtag Top Tweet Tuesday. Top Tweet Tuesday, and we have poets from every single country virtually, but we haven't had any from Sweden at all. So there's a huge gap there. Okay, so that's every single Tuesday. We have a host every single Tuesday, and some of them are as good as Dom. You know, only a few though, obviously, and yeah, people share their work. It is poetry, but it's short poetry, long poetry under that hashtag, hashtag Top Tweet Tuesday, and the Twitter site is at Black Bow Poems, also on Facebook and then Insta, but on Twitter that's the really active one, because probably a good few hundred people interact every single week. So it would be great to see other people join in, and our friends obviously over in Sweden are most welcome. So if you check it out, it would be great to see people's work. Thank you. Cheers, Dom. Fantastic.
No worries. Thank you very much for that, Matt. I know I put you on the spot there, and I don't know anything about twits or tweets. I'm bloody useless. And so to ask people to explain interactions in social media while they're talking to people live, I know is really difficult. So, but yeah, Black Bow, micro poetry really attracted me, that idea. We can share all these links through the festival, through Facebook. So don't worry if you've missed anything, but there's absolutely, I can see a call out there to Sweden to participate in this international journal, this international festival that Matt runs that's missing Swedish input. Okay, talking about Sweden, Bengt Bear, would you like to read something for us, please?
Need to unmute, Bengt. Bengt, you'll need to unmute.
Is he even there, Mel? Because
no,
I can't. They've got him.
Yeah, he is there, but his
he's unmuted now, I think.
He's unmuted, but his audio, your computer audio, is down. I think, Bengt, if you go to your mute button.
Okay, can you? I'm going to take this opportunity to say that after Bengt, if Bengt manages to come to us, I only have one more reader that I'm going to ask to come to the microphone, and that's going to be Rex Harrismith from America. So if there's anybody who is in the room, the virtual room or the physical room, who wanted to read, and I haven't yet mentioned, can you unmute your mic and scream at me now before I ask Rex to come and close the evening?
Rex has had to leave early, apparently, Dominic?
Well, bugger me.
We've had a message from Mike to say he's had to leave early. So we're trying to troubleshoot Bengt back into the room.
Okay.
Dorina, there's Dorina as well.
Yeah, that's who I was with. Yeah, somebody had to scream.
Dorina went.
Jennings, will you do something for us, please?
I will, while you're waiting. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to read a poem, and you know, I don't know that I've read it before in this group. I don't think I have, but it's It's a poem about a kitchen table, and as you know, kitchen tables hold a lot of memory and a lot of things. So anyhow, I got a new kitchen table, and this is what it's about. Kitchen table, constructed planks of lacquered pine, second or third hand, but resilient, with years that had lost its glossy shine. More gouges and scratches appeared. Memories and marks, a child's etching, a corner tip sawed in error. Beetroot and oxide stains, a compromised leg, implied a rough life, a lived with look. It was a heart-centered space from which we laughed and cried over tea and coffee, rich warm French onion soup to nurture, or lemon drizzle cake, as the case may be. This morning, a new table arrived. Sturdy-legged, matte-finished fir oak, beautifully silken, sensory, all clean and clear, without memory. I felt the tug, another layer of a past life, loosen and slip away, felt a queasy, uneasy feeling of change, of both the opening up and the reclaiming. I sat to examine rows of lace patterns, applied pressure to test durability, ran fingers across its splatters of burrs, and recognized the shift that had begun. That's it.
Thank you, Dorina. A wonderful delivery as ever, and more optimism, I feel. You know, a change, letting go of our scars, letting go of those things that bother us, and finding a sturdiness, finding a solid base upon which we can base our future. Have we found Bengt, or is the man gone? Okay, then, everyone, I would like to say thank you so much for all your contributions this evening. Those of you here in the room, there's been some fantastic dynamism here, which I hope has transpired. It's transmitted itself to those of you who've joined by Zoom. We felt your energy as well, and the chatter, of course, in the intermission is always full of energy and creativity. We're moving on to the festival, and if you want to hear some more Swedish poetry, which we didn't hear enough of this evening, really, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, Freka Raiha will be doing the morning poetry at 9 o'clock, and then at 11 o'clock, Fika poetry. Fika, we need to explain fika to everyone. This is it's a very Swedish concept. It's a kind of a social thing. There's an equation that we put on the festival website where fika equals coffee plus cake plus company plus conversation, and that pretty much describes fika. We would like to say friends rather than company, but it pissed off the alliteration, so we stuck with company. You know, if you want to learn a bit more Swedish, then you can say friends. The alliteration maintains in Swedish because you've got a K. Anyway, I digress, as Colin today. So that's the concept behind fika. Okay, so we got poetry early in the morning, which you can just listen to with your breakfast, like you did with Devu in this morning. It'll be Freka Raiha tomorrow morning, and tomorrow round about fika time, around 11 o'clock, will be Gabriella Eftime, which will be Swedish and Romanian and English. So have some fun with your coffee at your 11s. That's kind of a poor English substitute for fika. Your 11s, but substitutes still not.
Dominic.
Going to continue. Thank you all so much for your contributions this evening. It's been international, it's been interlingual, it's been creative, it's been absolutely wonderful. To all you guys in the room, And to everybody all around the world, thank you so much for everything you've given this evening. The festival continues.